Hello, this is Tom, aka Gedeon, here with Richard DM Bloodsworth. How do you pronounce your last name?
Salati.
Salati. I hate pronouncing names wrong. I was a scheduler for a 120 bed nursing home, and I found one of the most important things I ever did was memorize everybody's name.
Yeah.
Write it right, spell it right.
Yeah.
Made my job easier. But so we're talking today about a module you wrote, Whiskey Creek Runs Red. And the reason why I asked you on the show was you were on Eric Tenkar's live stream last Friday night. Mm-hmm. And it was his random party generator, I believe. And you had, I forget what the topic of discussion was, but as you used as an example, you mentioned this particular module, mm-hmm. and you talked about running it 4 or 5 times at conventions, and it came out different every time. And and it was a police procedural, and I've been working on a police procedural material for Star Frontiers, and I was like, oh, I need to take a look at that. Because you were talking about replayability, and what I've been doing with my CSI Port Lawrence stuff has no replayability. I mean, right. it's a scripted, because I approached it as, all right, I got to write a police story here. So I just looked at CSI whatever TV show,
right?
Because I've watched them all, and just wrote a CSI script set in Star Frontiers. And so that's how I approached it. And this is really vastly different. So that was why I wanted to have you on. That was the impetus of this. But before we get too deep, let me just say thanks to the subscribers who subscribe, and thanks to people watching this. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and bell icon. And don't forget to click on the link and go check out DM Bluddworth's YouTube channel. It's a great channel that I subscribe to because well worth watching. And you even had me on, I think, once.
So. Yes. So it's always good to cross over into each other's streams and videos and talk to each other, because I really think that it's important for us smaller YouTuber channels, anything less than 10,000 or, maybe 15 or 20,000 or so. But
that's definitely me.
For us to come together, and to just see how much common ground we have, where our differences are, and, how each channel kind of presents something a little bit different, but we all still have that common grounding, and I think that's really important for us smaller guys to get out there and make our passersby, because I'm sure your channel is very much like mine, where, most people that come through, they're first time viewers. It's like 40 or 50% of the people passing through are just passing through for the first time. And so I like featuring other channels to let them say, hey, if I really like this, there's 5 other channels that, I actively promote, for people to go on. And if we all did that and brought each other on to our channels, I think it would, for the hobby of YouTubing tabletop RPGs, because this really is a hobby for many of us, is, as much, if not in some cases more so, of actually gaming, which I'm not a big fan of. I prefer to have it split more gaming than this, but I think it's great. I really appreciate you inviting me on, because it's not often that I get invited on to talk about the things that I've actually written, so, as a creator, which I'm amateur creator, but I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, I actually, I did a review video on your module, and then I sat and thought about it. I says, you know what? I would rather, because I did I critiqued a couple of things in there, and I thought, I would rather have him on and have him answer those critiques, because, I suspect some of the things that I gave a critique about, which sounded like I was criticizing it, was really that I was pointing out a feature, and I had a suspicion you would say, well, actually, the design philosophy here was to do this,
Right.
and I had that suspicion. So that was why I was like, you know what, trash the review I've already done, and let me send him an IM, and because I think this particular module will benefit more from people will benefit more with the discussion about it than just me reviewing it. So that was the impetus for that. So I just want to do a quick shout out for my sponsor, Wizard Tower Games, and a very exciting product that is coming out that I can't wait to get my hands on. I already have mine on order. This is the Lost Adventures of Gary Con 1 and 2. Inside, you will find the Tower of the Mad Wizard and Return to the North. Timcast tournament modules written for Gary Con 1 and 2. Each module is presented in its original format as it was played by Timcast, but it also is receiving the 1E and 5E versions all in the same volume. Comes in a quality hardcover book with full color heavyweight pages. All copies are signed by Timcast. They come with a certificate of authenticity, several removable maps of areas in the worlds, and 16 unique monsters never before seen or published. Unique pre-generated player characters, a security hologram showing your edition number, and a 4-page comic spread from Jim Wampler of Marvin the Mage that was first shown at GaryCon 4. Once these copies are sold out, there will be no more printings. They will ship November 15th. Also included is a softcover version that will not have the limited edition features listed above. So you will be getting far more than just a simple book. You will be getting 2 rarely seen adventure modules, maps, unique monsters, pre-gen PCs, a great comic, and so much more. With only 300 copies, this hardcover collector set is selling out fast. So you better grab them before other adventurers plunder the dungeon before you. Now, also a special note, I just wanted to tell you about what's going to happen with the proceeds from this module. They are splitting the proceeds between 2 special charities. A portion of the sales will go to a 9/11 Never Forget Fund. However, we also are donating a portion to Rachel Steen, a brave woman who has dedicated her life in New York City to helping those with substance abuse issues. Rachel has recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and we hope to help her with some of her medical expenses that she will incur the insurance will not cover. So that is where the money is going to, and I'm very excited about everything connected to this particular project. The Lost Adventures of Gary Con 1 and 2. Supplies are running out fast. Book ships November 15th. Let me throw the video, the share screen up here. This is the Whiskey Creek Runs Red. It's for Gangbusters BX. Now, I've got to do a little confession. I have not read Gangbusters BX, and I have not played it. I've not sat in a convention game on it. Although, as part of my review, I went tracking it down, and I actually found it on Scribd.
Yeah.
Somebody had it up there, but I could not download it from there. So I actually just like read it, but skimmed it to because there were things in here. I was like, I wonder if that's just a because there's some tables I want to ask you about in here. And I was like, I wonder if that's from there, and they were not in there. So these are your unique creations, because I like what you did with that.
Yeah.
So when I look at this, this was a $2 PDF. It's 21 pages. It's 5 period photographs from Prohibition, which I thought were cool. 1 color map. 1 page of that is the OGL, but it's 20 pages of content, so it's 10 cents a page. So it's actually a really good buy at $2. So my first impression was that this was written as a convention game. Am I wrong or right on that?
No, you're absolutely right on it. This was written in late 2019, early 2020. And I'm fairly certain the first convention I ran this at was Cobalt Con, which might have been like March or April, so right at the strike of of the pandemic and the closings of everything. So yes, it was very much written as a convention game. It was meant to have multiple outcomes, or at least that's how it turned out. That every time I ran it, there was a slightly different outcome or a different way to get to the same outcome in some of the cases. So yes, it was definitely designed to be a convention game.
And it's so, and that, and I heard that, and that replayability. You didn't say replayability when you were talking on 10 Cars live stream.
Right.
I went, ooh, ding ding, replayability, because I was aware that what I was writing for a police procedural had not much, just probably a little bit, but not much. I mean, certainly if I the one adventure I ran where my player Fred Cobber shot an air car out of the sky with one laser rifle shot, that's not going to happen again, because he got up on the roof of his vehicle, took careful aim, dialed the weapon up to maximum, took one shot, hit, and then rolled the absolute worst result you could get on the vehicle damage table, which was crash and burn. So, that air car came out of the sky and almost landed on another player character. I mean, it was pretty cool. But that's just not going to happen again. But
it's like, you need to roll 3 20s in a row, kind of thing, in order for this to happen. Yeah, it's the chances of it happening are 1 in 10,000 or whatever that ratio is. But when those kinds of things happen, though, it's the greatest moment of the entire session. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this actually happened.
Well, then my players started talking about how the air car landed on a school field trip. Of kids. They were making jokes like that. I mean, I didn't put that in the situation.
Not safe for work.
It was funny. The jokes went that way, and it was just a lot of laughing, and it was a lot of fun. But I can't run those players through that adventure again. They know the sauce,
right?
And I suspect with this that you could absolutely run this again, that I could show up at 2 conventions in a row and sit in on this game and have it be fun.
I think that you certainly could, as long as you as the player sat down and you were saying, well, I know how the last one turned out.
Right.
And I know that there's a possibility for a different outcome. And so I'm going to play a different character and play it a little bit differently than I did the last time. So yes, there is that possibility. It's certainly, I think, more of a different outcome for the game master, right? So you can play this with different groups. And like I said, I was really shocked the first time that I ran it, that all 3 different groups of people actually 2 of them came to the same conclusion, just a totally different way of getting there. And one actually hit it out of the ballpark, and got the conviction. And I'll talk a little bit about that conviction thing. It's actually right in the intro, on the front page there, to kind of trigger what made me think of the system that I included, right? So I'll focus right in on it. When they talk about there were only 27 convictions out of 7,000. So that's what made me think of, well, there should be some kind of a mechanic in here that allows, based on the police procedures and how they follow them up, to enhance the jury portion and the court trial portion, which is a game mechanic. But there was no metric to adjust that dice roll at the end on whether or not you got a conviction. And I was like, well, let the player's actions kind of manipulate that end role. And that's the system that I included, that was my own.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I think if we sat down and ran a police procedural game with like Eric Tenkar, his perception of whether or not it was fun would be different from you and I, because I think that it's like my brother being military. He hates watching military movies because Hollywood gets it wrong.
Right.
And I've heard Eric say the same thing about watching cop shows and cop movies, because Hollywood never gets it right, and they do things that would, they'll have the sergeant doing things that would never go on, and that guy would be he'd be up on charges, he'd be out of the police force. That stuff just doesn't go on. And what I really loved that you put in here, if I could scroll to it, where was it here? So yeah, I noticed in here you had initial procedure, and this was like a little bit of a briefing to kind of get the player characters to be thinking, oh, this is how cops do it, to identify and observe and investigate, make first contact, surveillance after contact, and report. Then you had the arrest procedure here, which was establish probable cause, request a warrant, issue a warrant, and raid. And then you had the hot pursuit, engage suspects, call for backup, secure suspects, close up. And I just thought, oh, this is really good, because that's
actually a player handout. So that's what I hand out to the that's what I hand out to the players, so they have that in front of them. And that top. 2020 is actually a map from the time period. So I went in, I was like, let me get a precinct map from the time period. I believe I pulled like 1923. It actually probably says it right at the bottom where I pulled it, but it was 1923. And a lot of I'm a retired U.S. history teacher, secondary level, grades 6 through 12 basically. And so when I approached this looking for as much historical accuracy as I could find. And so I did look into the prohibition and the time period. I looked specifically at the New York City Police Department structure in the early 1920s. And that's where this particular group of player characters are all assigned to the newly formed motorbike division of the NYPD. And then I just layered upon that the prohibition angle of it, and then bang, it just started to click together. And that further follows, like, the historical context of it continues going forward, including the title, right? So the title has a double meaning to it, all right, which I'm sure we'll get to at the end.
Well, I wasn't going to spoiler that one. I was going to let that go. So we're on the map, and I just that was one of my critiques, was I really wish you'd put numbers on the map to locate these pharmacies, because you had to look them up by the street. So I had to kind of squint at that a little bit.
Okay.
But I just now noticed that your caption here says unique image. I thought it said unmodified from archival maps.
It is an unmodified archive from the maps.
Yeah. So
I could have gone in there with Microsoft Paint and done exactly that, right?
Put a couple of dots on there, and
put a couple of dots on there with a 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. But that's certainly something that would be very easy for me to modify.
Yeah, so that was one of my big critiques on this was, man, I wish he'd numbered them out. But it's actually not hard to locate these pharmacies, because you put them on. It's on this street, corner of the street, and this street. So you just read the map. Yes, and then my other big critique. I love period photographs for this module, because it gives you, I don't know, it just gives you something. But my grandmother had, I think my father called it a brownie box camera. And she would take pictures. She would take baby pictures of all the grandchildren in it.
Right.
But the prints from this camera are all on like a cream colored paper and in brown sepia. So they're brown. And so I was thinking, I says, man, if he ran these photographs through a filter so that they were that brown sepia,
right,
it would give you a little color, and I think it would pop the page a little bit more. But it would still have that black and white,
right,
thing without being black and white.
right.
And so that was me as a yearbook editor. You have 9 credit hours as a yearbook editor. I just love doing yearbook, and that's me going, this is how I would do that.
yeah. And actually, to be honest, virtually none of these were NYPD historical photographs. There were so like very few, like some were Chicago, some were,
not even this one.
I to be honest with you, I don't remember unless it actually says it in the caption.
You put a caption here that said, uniformed police stand to attention behind their sergeant in a New York.
That one is New York Police Department. So that one was, but I think the next one was actually Chicago.
Oh, that could easily be Chicago.
That's what I'm saying, is like there was not any kind of like strict, like this is strictly NYPD photographs. That's just not how the archive worked.
Sure, but these are fantastic. I mean, because it sets you in the genre very. I mean, it roots you right in there, and so I loved seeing, because I've seen a lot of old photographs as a fan of history, and I've not seen any of these photographs. So for me, it was first time seeing each of them, and I was like, oh, that is really cool. I like that. So I loved all of these period photographs you put in here. But all right, so let's move on to the heart and soul of this, which was, and I noticed this little phrase, let's be careful out there.
Yes. Hill Street Blues. Hill Street Blues. How do you not, there were definitely some Hill Street Blues thoughts in mind, with that line in particular.
Well, that was my mother's TV show.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't like, I got to watch Hill Street Blues, but we had the one TV, you sit in the living room at night. That was Mom's show. She's watching it. You got to watch it with her. So I remember that. I always remember that sergeant going, let's be careful out there. And I saw that. I was, that's a nice callback. So I love that. And then you get into this on the beat and the stakeout. They have a stakeout. They need to stake out 3 pharmacies, find out which one is, or how many of them are doing things the wrong way.
Correct.
That loophole. I did not know about that loophole in Prohibition, that pharmacies could be licensed to sell wine, that it could be prescribed. And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating.
Wine, because of First Amendment issues, was not included in Prohibition. They were prohibited from doing that. So wine was free to sell, but so they said, well, how are people going to buy their wine? And so the pharmacy became the de facto wine store, because the regular, I guess the liquor stores and the exclusive wineries were shut down. So, that was the compromise, I guess.
I didn't even think about that, communion wine,
there was, that's why wine was not included, it was a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah, but wine's pretty strong sometimes, it can be 12% alcohol. I mean,
wine is stronger than beer.
So well,
beer is not attached to a religious sacrament. So it's that's the maybe in Ireland it is, being partly Irish, but not a religious sacrament.
Yeah, I have an Irish friend. I think it's probably his sacrament. he plays to the cliche a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had not even thought of that, and so that was interesting to me to learn that that wine was still being sold that way. I'm sure everybody and their brother was making wine in their basement as well, and or brewing beer in their basement. My grandfather actually, my adoptive grandfather adopted my mother, was a bootlegger during Prohibition, and he had a still, and the only reason he got rid of the still was he discovered he had too many friends, and so he got rid of the still and he switched to brewing beer in the basement,
Right.
and that was that, and but. Now, what I loved about this module that fascinated me was this stakeout investigations chart. This is clearly key to the BX rules with because it's you're rolling on this table but modifying it with your wisdom modifier.
Right.
So it's the strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity.
Correct. Yeah. That's the big difference between Gangbusters BX, written by Mark A. Hunt, and the original Gangbusters, was that it really took the original Gangbusters and then just attached the BX game mechanic to it. So it D&D-ified it to a certain extent with the attributes and the skills and the character builds and that kind of a thing. So yes. So it actually made it a lot easier to do a chart like this, because that game system is much easier to manipulate than the D100 system was. So yeah, so it's definitely built off of that model.
Well, I've not read or played the original Gangbusters.
Right.
I had not read or played the Gangbusters BX, although I saw it, thought, oh, that's interesting. And when I went and tracked it down online and was skimming it, right away, armor class, hit points, saving throws. This, of course, although the saving throws in here are not, Dragon's Breath, and
right.
They're different, but you completely recognize everything. You immediately have familiarity with the system. It's just a different genre, and you adapt to that. And so skimming the rules, I was able to skim through them fast, gloss over things I didn't need to really look at to get to the meat of what I was looking for in the rule book to compare against the module as I was working up a review. Right. And so you're absolutely right. It's very recognizable. Even if you're a new player to this who's only seen 5e, you're going to recognize strength, wisdom, dexterity, charisma, armor. It's all there. It's very, and so it was very recognizable. But what I loved was this, because as I wrote my CSI adventures, it's very scripted. And while there are points where player agency does allow them to, all right, we're going to go talk to this suspect instead of that suspect, so you have choice of action. You're not railroaded, but it is very scripted. I know, for the crimes that I wrote, I know that this is happening on this day. And then 6 hours later, I know that this criminal is going to be doing this in response to the police investigations. So I know what's happening, and that's how I had to write those adventures. But this really just let you, all right, we're going to stake out here, and you roll, and the worst result could be -2 on a future investigation roll for the next 3 attempts, -1 to get a warrant. I love this, because you must amass evidence and establish probable cause to get the warrant to go. I was like, oh, why did I not think of this? This is a great mechanic. -2 for conviction using this evidence at the trial. So, and then it goes all the way to the good result of 10, which would have been you rolled a 6 with the D6 and had a really good wisdom modifier, or maybe one of these other +1s.
Right.
that are added in as you investigate. So you amass evidence, and then you take it to the court to get the warrant from the judge. And and I just thought that was really a cool way of doing it, and it probably was very easy for you to write. Do you want to talk about that?
Again, like some of my background, right? So I have a a very good connection to police procedures because I was a military police. I was in a military police unit, so I was surrounded by police officers, and both in the service, and they were many of them, or actually most of them, were either Suffolk County Police, Nassau County Police, or NYPD. So I've always had this kind of knowledge of this, at least on the peripheral. And then I taught criminal justice in the 12th grade, back in the very early part of my 26-year career as a teacher. So I knew a lot of these things going into it. So when I was looking at this, and I noticed that, I want to have the players basically be three types of police officers. One that is just going to, I want to crack heads and get the bad guys and damn the conviction, because it was only 17 convictions out of 7,000 arrests. You know what I'm saying? I wanted the one that would kind of bend the rules a little bit and still get to have a good chance of a conviction. And then I wanted the one that followed the procedures step by step by step. And then the potential outcome was that they don't get anybody, but if they did, that they would have the best possible chance of getting a conviction out of it. So I kind of, it was almost like an alignment system, right? If you were chaotic, neutral, or lawful as a police officer running through this adventure, what were the possible, outcomes of that?
I love that idea of here's the three types of officers, and it's chaos, law, and neutral.
Yeah.
Which is very BX anyways.
Right. Yeah. It really did come out of just thinking about all of the different elements that, that I was pulling from the game, from my own knowledge, and what I felt would be the best playing experience, for different types of players. So, that's really where it came out, was just that wanting to make something that was unique and purposeful throughout the entire adventure.
Yeah, and this certainly this lets you set up a situation, lets the players investigate it, and you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know what the evidence is going to be, and then you have another chart on what the evidence is. Based off of the rolling. And now the one thing, as I was first looking at this, I thought, oh, I really wish he had, because like this number one, which is the worst result, this result produced a false piece of information and may taint the investigation. So I was like, well, what was that false piece of it? Doesn't really matter with these charts, honestly.
Right. You do that on the fly, basically.
And well, I was kind of wishing you had done it, but then I thought, well, what would I do on the fly? Well, all right, I would say they're investigating a pharmacy that is not, playing games with the, with the loophole, and so they're in there, and I would just be like, all right, an elegantly dressed woman with a fox stole around her shoulders walks in, gives you a funny look, and then buys a bottle of wine and cigarettes for her, cigarette holder, and leaves. And something's off about her. And that's what I would have done. And, but the player characters would some of the players might actually just keep drilling down on that piece of information, no matter what.
Right.
You wouldn't even be able to dissuade them other than to, to be like, she's actually the mayor's wife, and they're
Yeah.
telling me to leave it alone
Yeah.
now. But then I got as I was driving over back home today, I was thinking, no, she's not the mayor's wife. She is the wife of a representative in the state house, not
Mhm.
not in Congress, but in the state
Right.
house in New York.
Right.
And she is the niece of the police
Yeah, commissioner. Yeah, it kind of goes downhill, and that's with that evidence chart. I mean, I give some like I give some suggestions, right? So send the Leos to investigate the wrong location, send them to investigate the wrong person. Um, the property is not illegal, so like if they violated violated them in some way. Or their activity was not illegal, and it was meant to show that if they pursued this, it's basically chasing the false lead.
The
They're
red herring.
wasting time, and there was a time component throughout this adventure, right? There was a timeline going on, so
Yeah.
events were taking place, and so if they were taken off the case chasing after these red herrings, then they may not be able to conclude the adventure. So it was just a chance of that's probably the worst case scenario for them, is that they don't break the case,
Right.
and it would take more than just one failed evidence check in order to do that, because they were going to get evidence checks throughout the entire investigation period of the adventure. And I, as the game master, I was sitting there and annotating their results along the way.
Right.
So I kind of had like a running, like all their modifiers were being calculated on the side, so at the end I would have, all right, well, this particular group of players, they're going to have a plus 16 to some of their rolls, right? And while another one might have a -4, and that's how it was really designed to play out throughout the entire adventure.
Yeah, because as I researched running mysteries and investigative type of RPGs, one of the things, particularly I got from, I believe it was Professor Dungeon Master over at Dungeon Craft, was that you don't want the discovery of a clue to hang on a dice roll.
Yes.
And here we're rolling for these clues and you're getting them anyways. And these clues could have a +1, a +2, a -1. And we're just totaling that up to see if you get a warrant that moves you to the next thing, to see if you get the conviction at the end. And I just thought that's a totally different step than all the other advice I had ever gotten on running mysteries, because I was, and I basically was sitting there waiting for the players to ask, well, we searched the room for this, and then I was not, I cannot have a spot check determine whether they get the clue. They got to get the clue for the adventure to move forward.
Right.
Because if they don't get the clue, then we can't move forward. Or I got to have more, I got to have like 4 or 5 clues so that they get some of them, and then maybe those move the adventure forward. And this just plays completely differently. And I thought, this is really a radical departure from every other investigative module I've looked at, read, stolen ideas from, and any of the CSI Port Lauren adventures I wrote. So
yeah, it's basically taking. I took the idea of, I like to use weapon quality, so a battle axe isn't just a battle axe isn't just a battle axe. When you find a battle axe, most players are, is it a regular battle axe? Does it look like it's magic? No, it's not magic. All right, so I'm just going to discard that. I says, but after carefully looking at it, you see that this one's a really high quality battle axe, and it might actually have a plus attached to it that they're not aware of, or it's a little bit lighter but still strong, or whatever.
Master
And so, yeah, that's when I came to this, I was like, I want the evidence to have different qualities. and for that to actually mean something, because it is a very, it's a very common thing for the players to search everything, and they're going to find everything, and there has to be, but what you find might not be useful. It might be minutia that you get, then you hyper focus on the wrong thing, and that throws off the pace. And so that's what I was really looking to create with this chart, was just the idea that and the players might not even be aware of, hey, I just got a piece of evidence. They're not supposed to know how good that evidence is until they start testing it out, and
Okay.
so that was really the mindset that I was going into with this.
Well, that was my next question is
Yeah.
are you rolling on this chart and letting them know what they got? The plus one?
No, they'll find out. So this result produces a piece of information, and May 10th, the investigation. So I would tell them a piece of information that they received from this, and not give them any indication of what the quality of that is. And then they will just follow their procedures, because they had their little procedure chart, and they would either pursue it, or now I described what they had, and they can differentiate that. I know there's one scene in here when they go into the one shop, and I don't mind, tainting this too much, revealing too much here. It's been around for 3+ years, so it's okay. Yeah. When they go into the one shop, and you probably came across this as well, and it was the shop that was doing the wrong thing. The key piece of evidence to that was the fact that the people sweeping the floors weren't young boys, or young girls for that matter, but they weren't young boys. They were grown-ass men doing the most menial of labor, and
milking it.
Right, and milking it, not looking like they were really paying attention to doing their job. And that was a piece of evidence that, if the players were really thinking about it, well, wait a second, this is something that breaks from the norm. This is suspicious.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you would get in using the evidence chart, right? If they rolled that one on this evidence chart, I would tell them, oh, you just see, you just see people sweeping in the things. They wouldn't pick up any of the other nuance of, they don't seem to be very invested in what they're doing, their job. They seem to be kind of old to be doing this kind of work. They seem to be, big and burly looking, and yet they're sweeping instead of stocking, and that kind of thing. So
sweeping the same spot from the
sweeping the same spot, or they look like they're just looking busy, but paying more attention to you as you enter in, because you're either uniformed officers or you look like cops, in your, if they were detectives, because they could have been either, right? They could have been uniformed officers. Some were always designed to be a detective, or at least I would assume that at least one player would choose to be a detective. And so they would have that look, as they walk in. So
cop hair.
And so that's where the evidence chart also kind of comes into play. It tells the GM how much additional information you should feed to the players in order to match up with the result that you're hoping they get.
Sure. And then after you've amassed all this information, then you're going for the warrant.
Yes.
So where was somewhere along here, there was this, you're rolling for the warrant, and there's the suspicious evidence.
Yes.
And so reaction of the judge and the search warrants. And I love this, that the reaction could be that he's friendly and blank check warrant, or it could be he's unfriendly and you ain't getting no warrant.
Yeah. There's
get out of my courtroom.
Yeah, essentially based on their roll. So they're rolling 2d6. They're adding all of the modifiers to that 2d6 roll from their evidence chart, and then it applies to this outcome, right? So it could be very easy to, even if they got the neutral, let's say they got the neutral, uncertain, they need more evidence. they would be told by the judge, this is not enough for a warrant, and then they'd have to go back out. And again, that's another delay in their process, that allows the rest of the events going on to move forward.
And I alluded to that a little bit ago. I love having. I know that events are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're screwing around, events are going to happen. They're going to push things forward.
Yes.
And I planned for in one of my adventures. This sailor goes up to an atoll to go pick some fruit on the atoll, and they find an escape pod from a starship, and there's a dead body in the escape pod. So they radio it in, and they send out the CSI team to investigate. And so there's somebody who doesn't really want that body examined,
right?
And I knew that they were gonna stage an arson attack at the police station at a certain point. And I knew how that was going to go down. And so you've got so much time, and they may not even be at the police station when that happens,
right?
Type of thing. And so I like having those scripted. If you screw around, I know this happens then. Then this happens at that point. And I love having that in play. So there is that ticking clock.
Yes,
it puts the pressure. You don't have all day. And so I love that, and I just loved having this procedure to get a warrant, because I had not incorporated anything like that in any of my games. They just were, like one time I hinted, one of the players said his character liked to do stand-up comedy, but he was no good at it. Yeah, and so I very strongly hinted. I came up with an idea for an adventure, and I very strongly hinted. I says, "Oh, you got a set at this club," and and then I went, "Do you want to invite all of your coworkers to see you do stand-up comedy?" And I did the whole wink. And so they all went, and and in the middle of his set, this car comes crashing through the front door. And that started that whole adventure off. And so they never had to get a warrant because they're at the scene of the crime. But I love this procedure. Suddenly it's like blowing my brain, going, oh,
right.
I'm going to make people have to get a warrant in the future. And I love this idea. I'm an idea whore, so I'm totally stealing your ideas.
Yes, you're welcome to steal the ideas, and I'll make sure to fail my evidence rolls to use against you.
So, no, I think that, and then not only that, we come down to where was it? Towards the end here. So again, more. I love all these vintage photographs, but down towards the end, you had all these notes for whether or not they're going to get a conviction.
Right.
And it's not really so much. Here it is. GM optional trial, doing the trial, skilled prosecutors, a D6, all of these things going on. And I love this little one in here, jury tampering. Mine was D8. So how do you work that into an adventure? How do you know that if there's jury tampering going on?
It had to do with, and this was based off the solid alibi witness. Let's see where I have jury tampering, minus D8. It was either directly from the rules, from the rule book, so it wasn't because there was a trial procedure in the rule book.
That is correct.
Then all I did was add to the modifiers to it.
For your
save is, it's been a long time since I wrote this. So looking at the jury tampering, the minus D8, there was an instance along the way, depending on how you went along, if the main guy was not captured, and that could lead to the jury tampering. If the main person wasn't captured,
So
they
he's
would look
throwing money
to,
around and he's sending
yeah,
thugs to go intimidate the jurors.
yeah. So solid evidence against the weak and corrupt against the evidence. See an evidence chart. I'm just double checking through this. Yeah, there is a rule in the book under under running the trial procedure that that included that. And if you, for whatever reason, as a game master, wanted to include the potential for jury tampering, and that would have came from how it actually played out.
Mm.
That's something that didn't come up in any of the 5 times that I ran it. So again, not all of these outcomes come out exactly the same way. So every instance that I ran at the trial procedure was a little different. One never went to trial. They killed everybody. You know what I'm saying? It was like they just wiped out. There was no one left to bring to trial.
That was the murder hobo
Yeah,
playtest.
yeah, that was the murder hobo thing. Fortunately for them, they killed all the right people, and it never came back to them that they beat up. Like I know in the first scenario was really meant to be like a fist fight, right? And one of those players busted out the shotgun and just started blowing everybody away. It was like, hey, mop boy, boom, and it took him out. I was like, holy crap, this is going sideways real fast, and yeah, they definitely followed the path of the chaotic police officers that are kind of on the darker side. The only thing I didn't include in here was the option to corrupt the player characters, buy them off, bribe them, or whatever, because I didn't want that element to make it the go-to dirty cop scenario. Plus, I would have to be the one trying to attempt to do that, and so I still wanted them to be you're meant to be, a police officer trying to do your job, trying to serve and protect, and trying to do that. And I didn't want to add that corruption element to it. I'm going to purposely try to corrupt you and entice you away, because I think that would have taken too much away from the intent of the story, of the adventure. I know sometimes people, oh my gosh, the adventure's not supposed to have a story. No, they're supposed to have like an underlying kind of theme, and the potential outcome. You want a very positive outcome, you want a kind of neutral, gray area outcome, and you want a disastrous outcome as a possibility for these things. So I didn't want to taint it, although I could definitely see with the advanced rules, which I didn't know about at the time. And it's the reason why I've been waiting to run this adventure again, because I want to modify it when the advanced rules come out. And Mark Hunt is working on the advanced rules. So when advanced, so the expert version of Gangbusters BX comes out, I would certainly look to either modify this or come up with the second adventure that was meant to be a piggyback off of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you should absolutely do a second adventure piggybacking off of this. This is, start a little series of modules going, and this is very much the, like the Tim Kask theory of, look, here's the situation. I don't know how it's going to play out. That's for the players to figure it out. And that's kind of how you wrote this. Here's the situation. You got a job to do. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know how it's going to resolve. Busting out a shotgun on a mop boy is certainly one way to resolve things. That's almost a summary execution style from Paranoia, the RPG.
Yeah. Like I said, it was really, really interesting, as a game master to see the 5 different groups just follow a different path in almost every case. I mean, it was like, wow, no one is really mirroring what the others did, and that's what was really encouraging to me, because I felt that there were enough choices throughout here and enough randomness throughout here to really allow for that to happen. Now, I was glad that no group came to the point where they just never got into the latter part of the adventure.
Yeah.
So that was, that was a good thing. And, maybe I would have kind of led them along, dangled that carrot in front of them to get them to go in that direction. Almost every one of these ran right to 3 hours. And one went a little bit over, like 3 hours and 15 minutes or so. But they were all, and if one was shorter, it was like 2 hours and 45 minutes, and they wrapped it up.
That's still a
So
good
yeah, the timing and the pace of everything from, from each of the groups, they were pretty much on, on point throughout. There were maybe one pursued a little bit too, like longer on their investigation. They actually looked at all 3 pharmacies. One got lucky; they went straight to the first pharmacy that was the corrupt one, and it picked up right away. All the hints and the tips, and then when they started investigating, that one was like bang bang. That might have been the one that ended in like 2 hours and 45 minutes. Because they just rock solid all the way through with lucky rolls and this and that. 3 ended up with officers getting killed. All right. So yeah, three player characters, on 3 different event, 3 different sessions ended up getting killed, in the end. So that was a nice thing. When I say, oh, it's a nice thing, I think in gaming, you have to have a certain amount of danger involved with it. And when you go to conventions, like I always expect to die in conventions. When I'm a player, I was like, what do you expect out of this? I actually did that in an interview. I expect to die. Right? That's what I expect. I did a live play 2 weeks ago, and it was a horror live play. So it's like, all right, so what are you anticipating out of this? I expect my character to die. I mean, it's just, that's how I go into it, fully expecting it. And, I wanted that for this too, because, firearms are pretty nasty, especially in the 1920s. You don't have all of that medical care and stuff like that. And, and a shotgun or a Tommy gun, they dish out a lot of damage, and this is still BX. So you don't have a lot of hit points to back up with, to sustain that kind of damage in one burst. So that's usually how people got killed, was either from shotguns or the Tommy guns at the end.
Yeah. And it's fairly lethal. And I imagine you just kind of, somebody dies early in the game, in a convention game, it's all right, here's a new recruit out of the academy.
Yeah.
Keep going. But what I did notice about this is that it builds from first encounter being kind of focused on a fist fight. So we're doing unarmed combat, then there's a little bit of, there are, firearms start to move in, then more firearms, and then there's a potential for a car chase. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but there is that potential there to do the car chase. And so you keep building to bigger and bigger and greater action through this. And and there are forks in the road. You can go right instead of left, or left instead of right. I mean, literally, towards the end, there's a fork in the road. So it's not linear. It's not that railroad. There's a lot of player agency in it, and it strikes me as this is a great module for introducing this particular game to a group of players. So you're home, it's a great one shot. You don't know if you want to do a gangbusters campaign. Do this as a one shot with your group. It's only going to take 3 hours, around the kitchen table. And if you have fun, come back and do it again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that almost every adventure that I've written, and subsequently published on Drive-Thru, they're all designed for the new player in mind. Not just a new player to the hobby, but a new player to that game system in particular. And so I like to showcase the various aspects of that game system so that they can at least get a taste of each of those steps. And so that I thought was, I think that that's important to do when you're especially running a convention game, because most people that sign up, and myself included, when I go to a convention, and I think when most players go to the conventions, they don't want to play the game system that they've been playing for, the last 5 years, every day for the last 5 years or whatever. They want to see, well, what's new, what's Hyperborea like, or what's Weird Frontiers, which I ran for the first time at ShireCon. What's that going to be like? And they want to see, well, am I really going to like this game system? And so they want to see the nuts and bolts into at least starting off with it. And so that's why when I ran Weird Frontiers, I decided not to go with pre-gen characters. I decided I'm going to spend the first half hour and let them roll, just certain types of character classes, but give them the opportunity to actually create their own character at the table. I thought that they would feel comfortable with it. And then once they realize, hey, I could put together a character in 5 minutes. So even if their character did die, and it wasn't the last scene of the adventure, which happened in my game, one of the player characters died in the last scene. So there was no need for him to re-roll another one, but it only taken him 5 minutes to re-roll a new one. And he could just kind of follow along and then just integrate them. So I think that writing adventures and not necessarily having to write them for, this is an introductory adventure, you should still have all of the different rules showcased in the adventure. So that's something I try to do as often as possible.
Yeah, and that certainly is what's delivered with this module. It builds in the adventure, and plus you have all these other systems added on: the evidence system, the warrants, the trial system was already in the rules, but it seems like you've embellished it as well. As well. And so I just thought this was really a cool way of running a police procedural, and so I'm, you've my brain has been inflamed.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad that you liked it.
So because we were running CSI Port Lauren here, and the game has kind of dropped and petered out. And particularly this year, we focused. Tammy didn't get to do much in the way of theater during COVID.
Right.
So now the COVID restrictions are relaxed. We did 3 plays this year.
Yeah.
And I was I was working on the sets for 2 of them.
Right.
So it was, it was a lot of time involved. And, but now I'm like, and probably I'm going to hear from some of my players in those CSI games that, let's get the gang back together again.
Yeah.
But this was really just a whole novel approach. And now that I hear that you were involved in police work, that you taught, police, criminal justice, maybe that presents a better spin on this than the Hollywood spin. And because I really approached it from, all right, I'll just write a CSI script,
right,
from the CSI TV show. And so this really seems like a great alternative. So for $2, it's worth it for anybody out there. Get the module, and it's a great procedure to steal from, but it's
Mhm.
also a great game to just run.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a fun game to. It really was a fun game to run. Um, like you said very early on, uh, it's it's a fun way to run it. It's fun to run it, and it's fun for the players to play it. Every player really enjoyed it, and that going from a D&D knowledge base to this is seamless.
yeah,
It's absolutely seamless, and that's another thing that really is a good testament to what Mark Hunt did with Gangbusters BX. I mean, he basically took the Gangbusters system and said, "I'm going to make this. I'm going to open this up to everybody," you
yeah,
know, and it was a brilliant move on his part to actually, and it's amazing. Like, I don't know how he got the trademark, to be honest with you, because we were having that talk beforehand that he hasn't gotten any pushback on Gangbusters slash BX. I guess the BX makes it, and the
different.
fact that it's a different tool set, basically rule system, basically that he was able to get beyond that, but thankfully so, because he has a lot of great stuff around that system too. So I encourage everybody to take a look at Gangbusters BX and just be on the lookout for the advanced version, which I think he's still tweaking along with it. But I'm hoping that the advanced version comes out with some of that nuance like I had added to. I mean, I shared with him my module long ago, actually
Mhm.
before I posted it up there. So you know, hopefully some of that actually made its way into the thing. I don't know, but that would be really cool if he did incorporate something very similar to having
Sure.
the quality of evidence having a bearing on the outcome of what you're looking to do through the procedure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm looking based off of reading your module.
Mm.
I'm looking to buy a hard copy of the Gangbusters BX rules. Um,
Yeah, it's still available there. I think it's still on drive through under soft cover. It's a soft
yeah,
cover book, and it was cheap. It wasn't expensive at all.
yeah, same
Um,
price for a physical copy and the PDF together. So
yes, yeah,
uh,
combined, it's great. And then you'll be able to see, like, when you're looking over it, you'll be able to see where I took the procedures that were already there and just enhanced them.
tweak.
Just
Yeah,
added those other sections to it because he has all the elements. I mean, I didn't come up with the procedure, the police procedure or the trial procedure things. Those were all in there. All I did was kind of flesh them out a little bit and gamify them, added modifiers along the way to them.
yeah,
So his framework, absolutely, and then just my little, homebrew take on it.
yeah, and it's. I mean, and I think you're underselling it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think if you let me tweak it for you,
Yeah.
the some of the layout
Oh
and the
yeah. Well, yeah. This
uh,
was
you
this was
could
probably my second
you
second attempt at putting something up there.
you could sell it for more, and you could have
Yeah.
it as a physical copy that people would be
Yeah.
like, oh no, that was really cool. And nice, maybe the small digest zine size, be the type of thing you'd
Right.
probably throw them in the giveaways, like at ShireCon. Somebody would get
Yeah.
that and be like, oh hey, this is interesting, and next thing you know, the groups start playing more and more.
Yeah.
But I think this is a nice solid product, and so I'm looking forward to uh, you know send me a message if you write a sequel to it, because I definitely want to check that out. And
Yeah. I'm definitely working on a sequel. Like I said, I was waiting for the advanced rules because that's where the sequel. I want to see where the game system takes it, and then include that sequel. And you know, the little hint on it. The double entendre of the title. Think about the time period.
Mhm.
So the prohibition and its connection to red kind of comes in during the time period. So,
well, I wanted to say concerning your title, the Whiskey Creek Runs Red. One of the things I did as a yearbook editor was I always pushed for us to sell the ads so that we could, because the school would pay for black and white, but if we had a little extra money, we could get an extra color, and
you
so you
make
get
red
one,
the color. Yeah.
well, yeah, and as an embellishment. And what I would do is in the period in photo albums, they had some of these little borders around the pictures.
Uh-huh.
They're a little fancy. I would do one that just does one corner. Okay, so that when the lines come down, instead of meeting other lines that go back across, they become blood drops. And you do that in a nice crimson red. And I think that would, and then just that bordering each of your pictures would be a little splash of color in there, and it would tie the whole book together. And I think that would, so I just throw that to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, that's one thing I have no experience with. I have no experience with layout or, other than looking at what like looking at the module that I looked at that you created, right? So the taking out the trash, I was like, it looks so like mine looks like a PDF. I mean, it's like literally it's a Word document thrown in there. So anybody and their 6-year-old cousin can make that module layout that I used. It's going that next step to actually having a truly professional layout. I'm not anywhere close to there. I don't use the programs that they use, that kind of thing. I forget what program they call that when they, design really. Yeah. It's just called design. Right. Yeah. No, I don't use that. I use a Word, Microsoft Word, and then it gets transferred to as a PDF, and that's basically it. So very, very amateur. Like I said, it's I will share with you I'll share with you, after this, the Star Frontiers adventure that I wrote. All right.
Sure.
And then you can take a look at that and see how this needs to, how should this be tweaked, and everything. And that certainly could use that. And that's another example of an introductory adventure, so meant to just introduce players to the whole theme of it and such. So I will definitely share that with you probably later on today.
All right. Well, so we're going to wrap it up here. And so we can expect more Gangbusters BX out of you in the future.
Yes. In the future. Yes. Definitely in the future, I will have something out. Like I said, I just reached out to Mark Hunt yesterday or the day before, asking him where the advanced version of Gangbusters is at, and he says it's still in the writing process, but they're close. He's close. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the basic rules as they are. I guess he did the box set as a Kickstarter, but you can get the rules on drive-through, and I'll put a link in the show notes. For that. So again, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for writing such a great adventure that has totally lit my brain on fire, because I'm like, I'm so stealing that idea.
All right. Well, thanks for the, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the, the compliment, of the product and everything. Like I said, it was a lot of fun to write, and it was very early on in my writing, so I'm glad that it actually worked in, both worked at convention play and worked to, inspire you to, add to your own system from it. That's not something I was, ever really expecting. I know those systems got a lot of praise in the running of them. They're like, oh, that's really cool and everything. I just never anticipated anyone saying, wow, I'm stealing this. So, that's a big, that's a, muchly appreciated praise that I would never have expected.
Well, I just didn't see anything like that in all of my research that I did in prepping to run a police type of investigation. for my particular game. And so I was like, this is just fresh and cool and different. And, and it's going to let you on the fly. Cause I was always, all right, what am I going to come up with next? You just set up a situation and let it run.
Yeah.
It's what you did.
Yeah.
And I was really writing very heavily scripted things, and I had to have clues, and I had to, it was work, and it got to be work. And this does not look like work at all to set up, if I was to, all right, let me take his thing and I'll just totally rip it off and put it in Star Frontiers. It's not work. You just set up the situation and let it run. All right, you guys got to investigate and let the players figure it out. And if they figure it out, they figure it out. And if they don't, they don't. And let the chips fall where they may. So I love that. So, all right, well, let's sign out. Again, what's the name of your channel again?
Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review.
We'll put a link in the show notes for people to check out. And this is Tom for Tabletop Tap Room with DM Bluddworth. Thanks for coming on the show. And everybody keep on gaming and try out some Gangbusters BX and the Whiskey Creek Runs Red.
Yes.